Hey guys, welcome back. I'm still obsessing over the new game. There are just so many topics to delve into. Today though, I've decided to do another round of mysteries since they're so popular. This time focusing exclusively on things we see in the depths. So kick back and relax while I delve into 7 depth mysteries in Tears of the Kingdom. Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. If you like what I do, please give this video a like and subscribe. Make sure to click the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Why does the Gerudo Desert have a wall? The Gerudo Desert is massive. From high up in the sky, we can see how it extends well beyond the borders of Hyrule, all the way to the coast in fact. Taking a look at the distance from Gerudo Town to the Lightning Temple Pyramid, we can get a loose measurement of that distance. We also know that the desert is vast enough to accommodate multiple settlements out there. At least it was in the ancient times during the imprisoning war with the Demon King. The desert has another interesting aspect to it, as it is one of the few places you can hit the invisible wall of the game, be it by traveling on foot, machine, or sand seal. I've played a lot of open world games in my time, and I'd be willing to chalk this up to a simple limitation of the genre. But then they created the depths, which adds a whole new layer of mystery. Since the depths are an inversion of the surface, you would think that similar to the surface, the land under the desert would go on and on into the dark realm, beyond the borders of the map. Personally, I would find such a situation not only logical, but outright creepy, as that could imply that the Gibdos have been wandering into this land from out there, from a dark, unknown place that we could never light up. Instead though, we are met with an ominous rock wall stretching from the ground to ceiling. So, what is going on here? Is this yet another mistake by the developers when creating this map? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Number 2. Why are Colosseums in the depths? Throughout the depths exist multiple Colosseums, all of which you can visit, fight in, and claim a prize. We also know that there have been many mining operations built into the depths by the Zonai, and we also know that the landscape is littered with these mounds, each of which has a spirit hovering over top, safeguarding their weapon. These spirits also seem to be Hylians wearing armor. This starts to ask some uncomfortable questions as to what was going on down here. We see that Rauru built a kingdom with Sonia, and that he has many Hylian soldiers under him. We also know that the Zonai were basically gods who descended from the heavens, so the question arises why there are Colosseums in the depths at all, and why there are so many spirits of soldiers down there. It doesn't take much guesswork to start seeing a connection that the Zonai built the Colosseums for entertainment. There is even a fighting ring built into Mineru's spirit temple, though maybe she was more into robot combat and not, say, Hylian slaves fighting monsters? Of course, we don't know if the Hylians were slaves or not to the Zonai, but usually when we start talking about gladiators and fighting to the death, the topic of slavery isn't far off. Whether or not these soldiers fought for glory or survival is unknown. What is known is that these Colosseums all have a lot of space for an audience, and the ones who built them, along with virtually every other structure we see down here, were in all likelihood the Zonai. Number 3. Why are soldiers beneath monuments? Traveling around the overworld, you will occasionally come upon a monument placed by Princess Zelda. This is in remembrance to the lives who were lost during the calamity. It's touching, and marked with a single silent princess. Of course, the flower is probably replaced every now and then by travelers. There is no way this is the same flower placed by Princess Zelda, but that is beside the point. If we look into the depths, we will find something more interesting about these locations. As previously mentioned, there are ghosts who hold and safeguard weapons in the depths, and usually appear solitary on a single mound of rocks. Under the monuments, though, there are larger mounds with 3 ghosts facing each other, each one wielding one of the 3 weapon types. If the logic about gladiators is true, then perhaps each of these larger mounds holds a trio of warriors who fought together against whatever was in those colosseums. Or maybe they just fought together in general, given that Princess Zelda is sensitive to spiritual essence, even having dreams when she was a child as talked about in her journals in Breath of the Wild. It is then possible that Princess Zelda sensed these groups of warriors. Perhaps their united defense reminded her of what she saw during the Calamity, when soldiers would unite together to fight off machines, ultimately dying. We simply don't know, but it is a curious mystery all the same. Hey guys, let me interrupt for a moment. I hope you're all enjoying the video. Would you consider subscribing if you haven't already? I need to reach 1,000 subscribers in order to become a full YouTube partner, and I'm getting close. Also, it's free, and you can always unsubscribe later. Now, back to the mysteries. Number 4. What is under Mekkar Island? If you compare the overworld and underworld map enough, you will notice that there are a few spots that simply don't have an underworld counterpart. Since bodies of water are often solid rock walls, it would make sense that some islands would be incapable of visiting, as they would be completely cut off. We can see this in a few places, and one of them is Mekkar Island. For those of you unaware, this island has some interesting tidbits behind it. It is an island with very little life on it, a single struggling tree with some leaves, and a little grass nearby. Its proximity to the Korok Forest is another thing to note. There is a campfire on it, practically inviting you to stay the night. In Breath of the Wild, if you wait until night or use that campfire, you will be assaulted by a bunch of Stal enemies. During the day, there are mostly harmless Chuchus around. In the days of Breath of the Wild, there was much speculation about this strange island. And so, come Tears of the Kingdom, I was wondering what was there, what was under it. It turns out that in Tears of the Kingdom there is a nasty infestation of gloom hands, but no Stal ambush at night anymore. All the same, the area doesn't exist in the depths for you to visit, and believe me, I looked extensively for a path from the Korok Forest. Could it be that this island doesn't exist on the map merely because we cannot visit it in-game? That both does and does not make sense. There are other island locations that will appear when activating light roots on the map, even if you haven't visited them. In fact, there's a chain of islands in Akkala who lack a light root entirely, and yet their caverns are both lit and present on the map. It could also be that islands such as Mekkar that have no entrance simply fail to be shown or detected by the Pora pad. There is another possibility though. To say that Mekkar Island is unusual is a bit of an understatement. But what if the island was entirely artificial? Of course, I've raised plenty of speculation in these videos talking about locations that are not properly reflected in the depths, due to more recent events in the overworld. I am of course talking about the splitting of the dueling peaks, and the damage to Mount Hebra. It could be, however, that Mekkar Island was placed by the Korok Forest sometime recently, and so there simply isn't an underworld counterpart to it. How it came to be placed there would be a mystery in itself. We simply don't have an answer to that. However, if we look at the nearby volcano of Death Mountain, perhaps a spew of lava from the volcano could have created the landmass. I'm afraid all we have are guesses. Number 5. Why does the Plains of Tatu exist? It's well known at this point that all the Bargainer statues line up with a goddess statue on the surface of Hyrule. Well, all except one. If we look under the east side of Hyrule Field, around the bottomless pond, we can find one of the statues buried to its neck. We know that these statues are ancient. and that there is a connection to the Hylian ones above them. But there isn't a Hylia statue above this one on the surface. This statue actually correlates to the goddess statue high in the sky, the one in the Zonai Temple of Time. And this is the only instance we see in-game, at least that I am aware of, where the depths are reflecting something this high up in the sky. Of course, the Temple of Time is ancient as well, and dating back to the founding of the kingdom. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't even built on the Great Plateau, but placed there temporarily by the Zonai, and then was moved back to its original location after Rauru fell. The game tells us that Zelda did have it and other landmasses razed to protect the hero. I think this will be an interesting idea to revisit at another time. But for now, all we know is that the Bargainer statue is seemingly here because of that statue in the Temple of Time, even if that doesn't fully make sense. Number 6. Why can't we ascend through the Hyrule Pillar? Ever since my first mystery video, people have been bringing up how Hyrule Castle isn't floating, but is actually on a pillar of stone extending all the way to the bottom of the chasm. I realized that after I did my footage collection for that episode, but I had already recorded the audio, so I ran with it. I did so because given the size of the pillar, and just how much of the castle was being held up by it, it seemed infeasible that the pillar alone could be supporting it. Thus, I felt and still do feel comfortable with claiming that it is floating. That being said, there is more about the pillar worth looking into now. I went and investigated the imprisoning chamber. It always bothered me that you could not descend into it given that Ganondorf shoved the castle up from that location. What I ended up finding is that the chamber does indeed line up with the pillar. This was then, of course, begging to ascend through it all the way up into the throne room. What I found is that in this exact section of the pillar, the action is simply not allowed. That poses the question, why? There are escape columns all around the depths that will take you to the surface. I realize that those aren't the pillar itself, but I have found at least one spot on the pillar in the overworld that would allow me to ascend directly into the throne room. There was a specific choice made about this spot in the imprisoning chamber. For some reason, they wanted to prevent this act, and I'm very curious why. Is it a technical limitation? Perhaps because Hyrule Castle is treated like a dungeon? That might be the reason, but I don't think that there's a story reason behind it. And the spot I ascended through before would have traveled through the Astral Observatory, so I don't think the observatory is causing a problem if it is even still there. And if it was, well, it seems to be filled in with dirt now. There was some reason why they chose to make this off limits, and I really want to know why. I welcome any speculation in the comments below. Number 7. Where are the tunnels beneath Hyrule Castle? Back in 2019, when the first teaser for the game dropped, we saw Link and Zelda traveling through some tunnels underground. Fast forward to the game's release, and Zelda talks about how they've been exploring tunnels under Hyrule Castle. Given that the imprisoning chamber is directly under the throne room, what she says makes sense on the surface. The problem is, there isn't a clear path that the two would have been able to travel from the castle itself. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hold off on the comment. There is a secret royal passage, yes. It can be accessed from the guard chamber, and also the observation room under this toppled statue. Both of these passages lead to a spiral staircase, and at the bottom of that staircase is a stone engraving, talking about how the first founder sealed the Demon King deep below. From there, the path becomes less worked, with occasional remnants of stonework remaining to show a path. This all leads to Castle Town, and eventually out to the settlement of Lookout Landing. The entire path, though, is strange for a few reasons. The biggest would be that it is covered with undisturbed moss, implying that it's basically been unaffected by the upheaval. There are also a lack of collapsed passages that would lead to the depths below, though there is plenty of rubble and convenient swords to make hammers with to clear it out. This entire area is around the height of 0 on the map, while the imprisoning chamber itself is around -1000. The only passages I could find that would lead down that low are in the newly formed chasm, and there are no connecting passages to this royal passageway. And so, I have concluded that this tunnel cannot be the tunnels that Link and Zelda used in order to access the Forgotten Foundation. Furthermore, if it was, I am sure that Zelda would have read the inscription on the stone. And so, when they found Ganondorf, she shouldn't have been as surprised as she was. Things get more interesting though when we get down deep enough to access it. In order to access it, we have to descend into the chasm, and then find an opening where there are some electric lights nearby. Moving past the misunderstood Horovlins, we make it to this chamber with a gloom-covered Lynel. It is here that we start seeing Zonai architecture. Pressing forward, it leads to a staircase that descends rapidly into the depths, to around -1000. The whole way is lined with Zonai stonework, complete with places to get devices and Zonai weapons. A little further on past a collapsed bridge, we finally come to the passage at the start of the game, the Forgotten Foundation. Up ahead, of course, are the murals and, of course, the imprisoning chamber. Fundamentally, the game presents the idea that the path to the Forgotten Foundation could be accessed by descending through the castle into tunnels. However, the Royal Passage simply doesn't connect. Other passages that may have gone this deep, for instance, the giant caves that would have been left by the massive Sheikah pillars, are now filled with stone, almost as though they were never there to begin with. My point being, there is no feasible way that the two could have gotten down here with the current presentation of the game. There could be another explanation, and I'm willing to say even a likely one, but it is all guesswork without supporting evidence. Basically, there are chunks of Hyrule Castle missing as a result of Ganondorf shoving it into the sky. It is possible that since Breath of the Wild, there were other parts of the castle and thus tunnels that weaved into the now Hyrule Castle chasm. Those would have likely collapsed due to the violent event, and perhaps a more clear tunnel leading to the Lynel room was originally present. The entrance to this tunnel, though, is simply a place we cannot find now, and based on my observations of the Royal Secret Passage, I'm certain it was not connected to that. So I ask again, where are the tunnels that Link and Zelda used that we saw in the 2019 teaser? Well, that's all I got for you guys today. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to click that bell notification icon. That way you won't miss out on future episodes. If you have found any of these interesting, don't hesitate to leave a comment. I'll respond to as many as I can. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. You guys are the ones making this channel possible right now. If you have the means of helping out, consider joining as well. You will gain access to my Discord server, where you can talk more directly with me about upcoming topics. And of course, I'm very chatty if you reach out to me about this stuff. Alright guys, I'm out for now. Be safe and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.